Wonderful.
Who's starting?
Weirdly, I was given a doctorate in our on our title, which I don't have yet. I'm working on it, but you actually have one, and they didn't give you one. So
You stole it.
I stole it from you. So I'm going to defer to my doctorate senior colleague. You can kick us off.
I found out that having a PhD means so little. Seriously.
Don't tell me that right now.
It means that you can endure, is part of it. Yeah. I think I went to my class, there were 4 PhDs in my class, and I was the only one that finished.
Oh my gosh.
Not because I was the smartest, but because I was probably the most stubborn.
Yes.
And they're just like, give him the thing, get him out of here.
Yes.
So welcome.
Not because the judge was righteous, but
That's
because
right.
the widow was persistent.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So welcome. We're glad you're here. We have talked about this session, and we kind of want to make sure that we don't sort of have a set agenda that we sort of give to you, and you walk away and go, well, that didn't help. But instead, we really want it to be sort of a conversation. I think that we both have some ideas that we're passionate about. In the idea of the arts and ministry, or what I like to say, creativity and the spiritual life, the gifts of creativity and how we use that and living out a God-ordained, God-blessed life as Christians. And so we want you to feel free to speak up anytime during this session, because yours may be the question that we've never thought of before, or they were like, it was that person who was, sitting in the back who we thought wasn't paying attention, who came up with the, seminal question that really made the session. So thank you all for being here. So my area of concentration is in where live theater rubs up against Christianity. That was the topic of my doctoral dissertation. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, which is a state university, and when I said that this is what I wanted to do, they looked at me like I had fallen out of a tree. It was the questions that I would get were just bizarre. And I really found that I had to kind of make my own way in doing sort of serious scholarship and faith-based institutions. And there are a lot of things that I found that were happening in my research. For example, when I would talk to what was then Samuel French, is now Concord Publishing, who are the big play publishers, and I wanted to talk to them about the censoring or editing of plays in order to make them palatable to a faith-based community. And they're like, well, that doesn't happen. And I was like, well, yes, it does, because, and they're like, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. La, 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 la. And I was like, wow, there's something really weird going on here in America, where you have a large percentage of the population who is at least nominally Christian, and a significant portion of the population that are practicing Christians who have certain moral behavioral standards, and yet you have this sort of entertainment industry, publishing industry, that is sort of putting their fingers in their ears and accepting checks, and I thought there's some real incongruity going on here. So that is part of what began interesting me, because as I would sit in a classroom full of other PhD candidates at Pitt, and I would say, well, when we did Equus, we really didn't do the nudity. We did, and they were like, what? So, well, we didn't do the nudity. Why? Like, yeah, I was like, I just was like, my experience was totally different. And so my doctoral dissertation is really sort of trying to have this out-of-body experience and going and examining what it was like as a young Christian who grew up. My dad was a part-time preacher. He was a deacon, then an elder, and my mom was a Sunday school teacher. We were in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and a lot of times on Saturday, doing other things. And that was just the upbringing that I had. And I went to college, and I said I was going to be a high school teacher of theater, because I'm from Lindale, Texas, East Texas. And I spent most of my youth hoping that I could behave in such a way that being in theater would be okay with God. It wasn't until I was working at Baylor and I went to a different sort of postdoctoral study and took a student with me, one senior who wanted to go to this class, and it was about combining your faith in theater. And we were driving back, and we stopped to get gas, and the student was sobbing when she got out of the car to put gas in her car. And I was like, "Are you okay?" She goes, "Yeah, I wish I had known earlier that it was okay to be in theater." And I was like, it's not only okay, it is blessed. It is God ordained, these creative gifts that you have. And it changed my perspective from then. I went from, it being my area of study to now this is a grand moment. The sky's open, and God said, "Theater's okay." Thank you for the orchestration. That was helpful. So yeah, I went to it, having sort of this burning bush moment in my life where it was like, maybe, or my Esther moment, maybe I've been put at Baylor for this at this time, because we didn't have a theater and Christianity class. In fact, at Baylor University, the first time I put up a notice that said, and I'm eventually going to shut up, put up a notice of theater, Christians in theater arts on the call board, it was torn down at Baylor. And I put it up again, it was torn down again. I was trying to get students to go with me to Christians in Theater Arts. I put it up a third time, it was torn down a third time. Finally, I just stapled it all the way around and said, a university is a place for the free and open exchange of ideas. What are you afraid of? Then it was not taken down after that. What I had to learn is that most theater artists, their relationship, if they were not raised in a church or something like that, and they had not been taught in their churches, faith communities, that the creative arts were created and ordained by God, that they didn't know how to kind of put these things together. And so Baylor, religion, the Baptist church, Big Brother was simply there to censor and edit you. So why would they react any other way? So in summary, my sort of calling, I feel like, or the real passion of my life since that time, about, just a few years after I started Baylor, is to educate young artists and faith communities about how Holy Scripture is just chock full of examples of the performing arts. Not just music, which are the obvious examples, not just expository preaching, but storytelling and enacting storytelling, and sometimes storytelling that would curl the toes of the local pastor. And things that God ordered the prophets to do. So my approach now is really using not only Christ, but the prophets to be an example for how we are to be theater makers and storytellers in the world. That was way too long.
No,
Sorry.
it was great. And I think, Stan, that's you just hit on, I think, the thing that we have to think about when we're thinking about arts and ministry, arts and mission, is first we have to, I think, do some ministry to and for artists before we start to think about how we can utilize the arts. The first move is towards the artists in a way of naming their vocation as a viable path to holiness, not lesser than or more than other callings.
Right.
But particularly in a sort of post-enlightenment, de-enchanted world, to say, actually, to pay attention to the artists. I remember when we started the Faith and Arts Chapels, which is meant to do so much of what it's meant to be the first steps. Hopefully the students who take that would never become seniors who go, no one ever told me.
Yeah.
It would be day one of chapel. They're going to hear God is a creator. You're invited to be a creator. So ministry to artists first, and then out of that, how can the arts be mission? And that mission is going to need to be shaped through how the artist sees the world, which is going to be so different than a sort of left brain approach to, okay, missions is a set of formulaic propositions. It's a set of doctrines that have to be mentally assented to. It's and so all the real stuff is done by other people. And then the artists can come in, and they might be able, if we've got time and we got a little bit of money, or they don't need money because it's their way of serving the Lord. Thank you for laughing. Then we could decorate that truth. We could put some nice little frills around it.
They can do a skit.
They can do a skit, and then the reality will come when the pastor comes up and gives an expository, well exegeted sermon. Now I teach at the seminary. I'm all about well expository, exegeted sermons. But maybe the thing is encountering the art. And I think if we understand human beings, and this is sort of where I try to get our students, and I don't know, it's just seeds. All of this is just seeds. And I think that's one of the gifts of being an artist, and one of the worst things about being an artist is it's just like, I don't know. There's so much about, I understand why people go, I just want to give you the truth, and then maybe the artist can decorate it, because I'm going to ask everybody to bow their heads. I'm going to get people to fill out the role. I'm going to have numerical signs of whether this mattered or not. And so much of what the arts do, so much of what beauty does to us, it's 10 years down the road that something occurs to me. And it's just really hard to get people to go, that really mattered. It was this moment. It was this story. It was that I had this imaginative experience. And then I was confronted with somebody on the side of the road who'd been beaten up. And because that story had been told, I knew, to be their neighbor is to act as if I were their neighbor, right? That's what Jesus says. It's, who's your neighbor? Anyone who you will act neighborly towards. And who knows, it may not occur the moment that guy walks out. It may occur later down the road. But if we have the understanding that human beings are fundamentally worshipers, that's who we are. We're going to worship something. Our only choice is what we worship. And then if we have the understanding that artists are those who are giving the specific vocation to call and draw people into worship, and I think that's true no matter what they're calling or drawing people to worship, then I think we go, arts are already always at the business of calling and drawing people to worship. Sometimes what the artist does, like the prophet, is merely say, hey, if you worship this is where that leads. So you may watch a film where someone is greedy and despicable and their life ends in a hellhole, and you go, well, that's not the gospel. And you're like, well, it's the beginning of the gospel to know that going down this road, the wide path that leads to destruction does not end well for you. That's a ministry, right? And so a lot of the darker, grittier things that we see, I think when I tell students you could tell stories that end badly and you could be doing ministry, I think that lightens them up where I'm like, I mean, look, I also, many of us want, and if we don't ever have that complete circle narrative of not only death, but resurrection and redemption, like we want that. We want the couple to get together in the end. We want we want ultimately evil. If you watch some of the biggest films of all time, what happens to Thanos? What happens to Voldemort? They literally like dissipate. And it's like, oh, that's what we want to happen. Is we want evil to have no record on the earth. We don't even want a body to be left over of pure evil. We want it to completely mist away. And so that whole narrative is really important, but maybe your calling is just to be the prophet who's just like banging the drum saying, this path will not end well. And so then if you think about artists are always drawing people to worship or showing them the dangers of worshiping wrongly, then I think you can start to have an imagination for how the church could partner with that. And sometimes that might happen on a Sunday morning or in an official church service, but other times it might be merely, supporting that artist who's putting on the local show within, the theater down the road and walking with them through, hey, I've got to tell this tough story. And often I think that's the thing where you how do you know you're an artist? You feel like I got this thing and I got to do it. And like they have this sense of calling. Eugene Peterson, who translated The Message, said he understood vocation first because he first encountered it through artists who were in New York. He was a pastor for a time in New York City. And they would go, I'm a dancer, I'm a writer. And he's like, no, you work at, you wait tables at the diner. But they would go, yeah, no, but what I am. And for him to become able to understand himself as a pastor was he said, oh, it doesn't matter if I'm being paid to pastor right now. It doesn't matter if I have that job. I am called to be a pastor. And I think that's one of the reasons I love working with artists is because they have these callings. And so the worst thing the church can do is come in and say, you're wrong. Because then they go, I don't know, like I have this nagging sense that I'm supposed to do this thing that really is offensive, and I know it, and I'm not gleeful about that. I just have to tell this story. I think you were telling me about a story like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, read Ezekiel. Ezekiel is the best of the books of the prophets to read, to really kind of understand the heart of a serious artist. Because it says God comes to him over and over again and says to do this and says to do this and talk to them. And they may not listen, but I want you to go to them and talk to them and do this and put it on your heart. But first, I want you to take it into your heart. Paraphrasing, obviously. This is the Stan version. And I want you to take this and I want you to go home and I want you to think on it. And it says that Ezekiel was troubled in his spirit. He was troubled. And there's a play that I want to write right now. It's been on my mind for a couple of years. But it troubles my spirit to write it. There's something in me that can't forget it. It's about school shootings. And a group of parents that get together for a support group to support each other because they've all had a child die in a school shooting. And how that bitterness eventually turns. And it starts in the past tense, or they would have been here, having breakfast this morning. I would have dropped them off at school. And then it goes to, and then eventually by the end of the play you hear, well, he'll be at this spot at this time. And you become to realize these parents are planning on taking out the children of senators and representatives. And it's horrific how the bitterness has taken hold of them and turned them dark and everything. But that's a play that somehow is in my head that makes me want to say, we've got to grapple with this as people of faith. Who cares what you believe about guns? Whether you think they're bad, whether you're good, whatever. When people are unheard, when people feel like they're suffering in the dark, that is when I think that evil can take hold of them.
Yeah.
And you have to drag that stuff into the light. And the thought of writing that place, well, I haven't written it yet, is because it troubles my soul. to sort of live in that space
Right.
for a while.
And so I think like artists who are called to these things, and I'll say that another thing is artists just don't deal in categories the same way that the world wants to say everything's you're pro gun, you're anti gun. It just artists are able to go in and you know, one of the great examples is the movie Patton. Francis Ford Coppola went on to direct The Godfather, wrote Patton. And some people think it's a pro-war film, and some people think it's an anti-war film. And regardless, it's a film that shows the complications and the deepness and the darkness of war, while also showing that in the midst of that, people can be exceptionally brave and courageous. And isn't that a virtue? And I think like that, if pastors are stuck with categories as they deal, and artists ought to have someone who walks alongside them in the creation of such things. And gives them guidance and holds space. But I think often pastors feel like they got to categorically say, but at some point you've got to do this thing where you've got to say right, wrong, this, that. But I think this is where arts can be, if not the fullness of missions, at least a forerunner.
Yes.
Because people begin to go, oh, I didn't feel like that artist had an agenda for me. I felt like what I was able to see was the darkness of my own heart and go, yeah, there but by the grace of God go I. I would absolutely want to destroy people if they killed my child, right? Like that's there in me, right? And now I'm left to deal with something, and I go, well, who will deal with that within me? And I don't think it's a stoicism. I think I need a savior. I need something to come in. So I just think like that sense of artists need people to walk alongside them, and then people who go, we're not after some numerical, you know, standard, some goal to go, okay, X number of people see this film, and then X number, or go to this play, or encounter this piece, and then they make a decision at the end of it, or they text their senator at the end of it. You know, we can talk about all over the map. The arts, it can't be that they don't have any goal. I don't think that's right. But that they are playful about the way that they walk around things. And I think in a lot of our ideas about missions and ministry, we don't have that category because everything is a category. People are either lost or saved. And I believe everyone needs a personal relationship with Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. That's the only answer. But I think relationships are they're not categorical either, right? They're sort of these murky, misty things where we're always sort of working them out. And I think the arts allow us to work them out, and then the arts also allow us, when those things have grown stale, the other gift of the arts, I'll say, and then I think I'd love to have some questions, but the other gift of the arts is they make the familiar strange. And so for those of us who have been walking a life of faith for decades, it can be really easy to just sort of have ourselves grow numb to the good news of the gospel, and it just becomes a category. Yeah, I'm a Christian, I do this. C.S. Lewis said that he wondered why as a child he couldn't feel the way he thought he should feel about the story of Jesus. And he said, I think it's because actually that obligation froze my feelings. Being told I should. We were talking about this in Faith and Arts Chapel the other day, being caught by our oughts, right? Or as my wife said, you're shoulding on yourself. I should feel a certain way about Jesus, you know, and so I can't, because what I actually want is for that to be an authentic, vibrant experience. And so he said, I wondered if by casting the stories of Christ and his sacrifices, his love for us in a different light, by just telling it slant, as Emily Dickinson would say, I couldn't steal past the watchful dragons, the things that inhibit us from feeling the fullness of the beauty and glory of the gospel as we know we should. If I could suddenly say, well, it's a lion and it's a stone table, and then we find ourselves like weeping with, oh my gosh, Christ loves me, right? because it's a lion and a stone table, I can see it again. And so I think particularly the arts as mission and ministry to a world that's really calloused to the good news, that's like, yeah, we've heard it before, and you actually just want me to become the kind of person who votes for the people you want, and this is all a trick to get me to do this. If we can present the fullness and the beauty of the gospel in just a slant way, and the light hits the stained glass in a way we've never seen, we could see it for the first time. And I think that's the other aspect of it's kind of a prophetic task a little bit, reminding people who God is.
I think that it's a mistake to think of the arts as a Trojan horse.
Yeah.
That if we just dress it up, we can slide the gospel in there.
Yeah.
That's not it, in my opinion. In my opinion, it is, for the artist of faith, it is your living sacrifice.
Yeah.
It is the thing that brings joy to God. I cannot imagine that the creator of the universe made tonal chords come together, made these beautiful cues, made our ability to tell stories with the use of irony, and that all of that was created as a Trojan horse. That I don't buy that. And I think that not only do the arts make the familiar strange, but they make the strange familiar. Mm-hmm. In a way that you will see something that you think that is not part of who I am, but you begin to see, oh, maybe it is. Probably the first time I really kind of stepped out on a ledge as a faculty member at Baylor, I didn't have tenure yet, but I did a show about a woman who was sexually molested by her father. And it went on for a while, and after it had happened a while, the mother walks in on the father doing this, and she shoots him and kills him. And it's all the story of this kind of being retold. And of course, I did this at Baylor, and I gave everybody a warning and all that kind of stuff. And the reason I was doing it is because, you know, my faith compels me to sometimes give some serious messages out there about, you know, healing and where's the source of ultimate healing. And of course, I had somebody write and say, well, Baylor must not be a Christian university if they would do a play like this. And I thought, because I got one letter from a minister's wife who said, I have been working in the prison in Gatesville with a woman who this is her story. Wow. She murdered her husband because he had been molesting their daughter. And she said, I did not know how. Sorry, I started to get emotional. She said, I didn't know how to connect with this woman. I didn't get it. I didn't understand. But I came and saw your play, and I felt so convicted. She said, I now want to go. I can't wait to go back into the prison to speak with this woman. Now, she said, I really believe that this is a message meant for me. She said, maybe you did it for everybody, but I see this play for me. Yeah. You know, and that kind of thing, I think that person who is like, you know, they are righteous enough that they're going to be fine. I didn't make them stumble, right? But this other person needed that message at the moment. And that's the thing that as Christian artists that you sometimes, sometimes the hardest part of being an artist of faith is when other people of faith misunderstand you. Is when God has put this troubling thing on your heart and you want to give this message and someone says, well, if you're a Christian, you wouldn't do that kind of play. And I'm like, you know, I use the example of a woman who I absolutely love and respect. She and I had what I call a Paul and Barnabas moment. We had a sharp disagreement and we needed to just kind of go our separate ways because she was so offended by Schindler's List. And I think Schindler's List is just a marvelous film. Yes, it's rated R. Yes, there's violence. Yes, there's nudity. All the sin in it. But it ruined it for her because she was like, you know, Schindler's List, all that nudity at the end was so unnecessary. And I was like, yeah, nudity in the Holocaust was unnecessary, was it? And I don't know, but I love her I think she's an amazing woman and everything, but we just didn't agree about that. Now, do I think that nudity in films when it's salacious and is causing sexual titillation and all that kind of stuff is bad? Yes, I do. But I don't think that things are monolithic. I think, what, this is the woman who would be saying, to Isaiah, well, that nudity is totally unnecessary. Tell that to God. I don't think that everything in the arts or in Scripture is black and white. I think that that's where, I love this when Josh Carney said once, he said, for my children's minister, I want a fundamentalist. I want somebody who can go in there and say, there was an ark, it rained 40 days and 40 nights, and 2 of each animal and all that kind of stuff. He said, for my youth minister with the teenagers, I want a charismatic. I want somebody who can get in there and make those teenagers excited about things. He said, but for my adult minister, for people who are having to grapple with the hardest issues in life, I want a mystic. I want somebody who can rest comfortably in the mysteries of the cosmos and know that even the angels do not understand.
Yeah.
Like I get chills thinking about that. I wish that I could take credit for it. That was Josh Carney, and I love that idea that we can be following God, we can be resting in His hands and in the Spirit, and still be walking on the edge, and somebody that we love can take issue with what we've done.
And I think that speaks to the diversity of the arts as well, like what Carney's saying and what we're thinking about, and again, the various ways of, and then I think that's one of the hard parts of someone like a Lewis. It's like, well, just go do C.S. Lewis things. And it's like, maybe that's your calling. I mean, for one, I would say, Lewis, that was him working out when he was like, I'm trying to steal past Watchful Dragons. He was like, well, actually, first what I was doing was trying to understand why I kept getting these images of a fawn and a snowy wood. He's like, it grabbed him. And then he was like, as I began to sit with it, I thought, oh, maybe this is a story that does this. And so one, I think, is we tell Christian artists, we're like, okay, well, we found some categories where that's kind of safe. You can make The Chosen if you're a filmmaker, and you can write Narnia if you're a writer, and you can write Bach cantatas if you're a musician. Like, these things are safe, and I think what the reality is like, I need Narnia, but I also need A Good Man Is Hard to Find by Flannery O'Connor, which is not doing what what Lewis is doing. So we get the hand can't say to the foot, I don't need you sort of sense, even in the arts themselves. This beauty of breadth and breadth of expression, that some things are sort of catechizing us, and then some things are really challenging us. And then I think there's a reality with Paul's words, right? We don't say to the weaker brother that you're the problem. That someone who goes, I can't deal with that stuff. I can't deal with Schindler. I can't deal with the darkness of O'Connor. I just want to sit and read Narnia and think about how God is strong and mighty to save, and He is going to save me at the right time. We don't say to that person, well, you suck.
Right.
We say, God bless you. And like, may I be challenged also by that. But at the same time, the weaker brother can't say, because somebody might need it.
Right.
And I think that's the beauty of the arts, is it's a 99-1 scenario with artists. If you told me you're going to write, so you're going to spend 10 years of your life working on something, and it's really only going to affect one person, but it's going to change their life, I'll take that deal. And I think that's sort of the beauty of arts and ministry and mission, which is why it's not always it's a hard thing, because we do get sucked into numbers, success, all those things.
Well, and I think that we have to, as people, if you're working with a faith congregation, it's teaching that community to nurture artists. Teaching that community that artists have a place within it. They're not freaks. I can tell you, somebody who does theater, you know, I go to church and people are like, well, really, what do you do? You know, and being a theater major, you know, in college, people would ask, well, what are you doing out there at college? And I would say, well, I'm a theater major. Yeah, but he's going to teach. My mom was right about that. He's going to teach, you know.
Yeah.
And I began thinking, you know, we need to train people that, you know, you may want a Luke, you may want a doctor, you may want, a Joshua, you may want a soldier, you may want, whatever, but you may be raising a Bezalel, you know, and not know it. And what happens if God has gifted your child in that way? You say, well, that's not. I think it may be Madeline L'Engle, one of the greatest victories that Satan has ever had is making us believe that the arts are for children, and that storytelling is for children, and that it's for Vacation Bible School, it's for that kind of stuff, and then we stop doing skits. Maybe we'll do them with, you know, a summer youth series with teenagers, but for adults, you don't do that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that we are putting God in a box
Right.
when we say that God must be approached through expository preaching, through reading, that's it. And we've become sort of Quakers. You can't smile, you can't laugh. So sorry for
But
the
you can
Quaker
make
group.
some great oats, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you know, anyway. So I don't know if this is resonating with
Yeah,
folks.
I'd love to
Do
hear it.
people have questions about anything we're talking about, or comments or concerns?
I have,
Yes.
Johnny, as you were speaking, from my experience of the arts shows the human experience. So there are times where you may be going through something, you may feel alone.
Yeah.
You may not have the words to articulate what you're feeling. And so whether it's theater, it's music, something in print, you know, it almost gives you license, like, okay, I'm not by myself, though
That's
we're not
right.
by ourselves.
Yeah.
But we are walking through those experiences by ourselves, because we have our own journey to walk.
Yeah.
But there's times where, it was, I can't remember, I know, it was a Tyler Perry movie, and Gabrielle Union was Daddy's Little Girls, or something like that, I think that was the title of it, and there was a particular line, Gabrielle Union, it was just 5 words, and I lost it. I'm in the movie theater, it was,
Yeah.
people were like, what's wrong with you? But it spoke to something where I was, and I didn't have words to articulate what I was feeling. I knew what I was feeling, I just didn't have the words, and I went, that's it. And I went home and wrote like a 2-page poem,
Wow.
because there was a release.
Yeah.
I love it.
And so, all because of those 5 words. So, that's how I look at, it's freeing.
Yeah.
And so, that's what I jotted down. But, it allows people not to just be, but almost like I said, gives them a license to be transparent. And I even think, as the lady that you were speaking of, that we have the Paul and Barnum, Miss Disagreement,
Yes. Yeah.
I've noticed, well, I'm just not speaking for myself as I'm talking, but, you know, when, as a worship leader, you know, praise the Lord, everybody, God is good, and we know all those things, but there was a season where I had to take a leave of absence from
Yeah.
leading, the beginning of the year. My sister, had multiple medical emergencies. My dad had a medical emergency. I didn't know if my son was gonna be returning back from Israel. He's in the Army, so I didn't know.
wow.
There were a lot of things were up in the air, and it was kind of like a culmination, it's like I need to take a break. And so, when I, went back up in June, when my son came home, my sister's health was, everything, you know, was a positive, turn. And then I spoke, and I said, there were times I was up here leading when I didn't wanna be. I'm ministering to you, but I needed to be ministered to.
Yeah.
And I remember just speaking that, and I was in tears, you know, because oftentimes you don't wanna, cause anyone to stumble, you know,
Right,
it was
yeah.
weaker faith. But in that, me being transparent, I had so many people come up afterwards, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said that, thank you for
Yeah.
saying that. And it was like, I'm glad something resonated with you, I'll just speak it from my heart.
Yeah.
And so I think just being in that space, being comfortable enough within yourself by ministering to the artist first, I think that allows us to minister and speak to others as well, just being transparent.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. As you talk about that experience, that it had you prompted you to go and write a poem. You know, I think that people could even benefit from that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are some churches that will have almost like an exhibition type thing, but I would encourage people to open it up to all of the arts, and really talk about people. You know, there's a difference between, it's like I enjoy I clearly enjoy baking, but I'm not going to open a restaurant. Nobody would come, right? And I wouldn't advise people to come because sometimes it's a real disaster, right? We have to realize that I think that the ability to create is in all of us.
That's right.
I think the ability to create is in all human beings. And we know that God loves us making a joyful sound, but I guarantee you don't want me being the soloist on a Sunday morning, right? So there's also this fine line that you walk in encouraging people in their creativity to commune with God, but it may not be that particular tone-deaf soloist who really wants to lead worship, that it's not going to be beneficial to all of the congregation. So that's a brass tacks, rubber meets the road thing that you have to do if you're working in ministry with a congregation, is that level of discernment. I mean, we deal with that in a theater department, or somebody comes in who thinks that they are the next Meryl Streep. And you're thinking maybe you're the next Zelda Fichandler, who was one of the best, most well-known female producers in American theater. She changed the course of regional theater in the United States. But nobody knows Zelda Fichandler, but everybody knows Meryl Streep. So everybody's position is not in the spotlight, but that's a hard sort of just practical thing that I want to mention as we're encouraging the arts, is that everything that's created is not the David or something like that. There are some people who are truly gifted, and I think that sort of becomes apparent.
All of that resonates with me, because talking about including all different kinds of art is, I feel very blessed and fortunate that the church that I went to in Plano, I kind of felt this calling to, I'm not the best, still not, definitely not now, but the best dancer of all time or anything. I was just sort of a dancer, but I had the opportunity to do a dance at our church. And so a lot of times I would hear a song, it's always pretty much lyrical, because it was based on a song. But I was able to do that at my church, and I remember at the time the pastor was like, well, I never thought of having dance at church, but okay, we'll try it, kind of thing. And out of that, I ended up leading a dance ministry for 10 years at my church. And it was adults. It was adult women who they wanted to be able to express. They hadn't necessarily danced before. And they wanted to be able to use that expression, and sometimes we would do a dance at church, or we would do it at different things in the community, and so it was just a really neat opportunity, and I really did feel a calling to do that at the time, so much that I was like, well, I'm gonna go and get some more dance training. So I went and got an associate's degree in dance. After I found out I was pregnant whenever I was doing this. So I was taking ballet, and I'm 5 months pregnant. So it was really an interesting time in my life.
But, that shows real reflection, I think, that in sort of that ministry that you were working with there, one of the things I think that we can do to help artists the most is examining, why are you doing this? And if it's to be seen,
Yeah.
which that is usually in theater. I'll just go with the theater folks. I'll pick on them, right? Because I'm one of them. That's usually how it starts, but that's the immature part of us, right? We want to do it and we want to show off, but eventually it has to grow into something else.
That's right.
To sort of be sustained. You know, you're happy and you don't clap your hands. That's fun and singing when we're little, but that the music has to grow into something else. And eventually we have to ask ourselves, is that therapeutic? I wrote a play, my most recent play that I wrote, it was written in an old style and it's very talky, and I know, I have the presence of mind to know it is not commercially viable, but it was the story I needed to tell. And I'm happy with that. That's okay. You know, if there's gonna be a handful of people who will see it, and that is it. Because I'm not out there hustling, trying to get it seen, you know, yeah.
Is there a creative arts ministry coalition for Waco or something like this?
No.
That I know of.
No, there's not. There are pockets of people who care deeply about it. I mean, one of the hard parts, I've had a lot of conversations with people who are interested in this. One of the hard parts is I'm just trying to serve Baylor, right? Like, I'm just trying to serve the freshmen who come in every year. And yeah, go ahead.
It might not be specifically related to this, but there's Waco Community Theater.
Of course, right, yeah, so there's certainly, there's Creative Waco, which is an amazing organization. There's community theater really is like a very creative place. And we're talking about the Magnolia Effect. I think one of the gifts of Magnolia is it literally is, you know, for whatever else it is, property tax raising and all these things, it is a place focused on beauty and restoration and a sort of creative. So it's brought a lot of artists in to the city who weren't here before. But yeah, in terms of like a faith-based creative coalition, no. Now, I know there's in Dallas, there's Art House Dallas, they're good friends of mine. In Austin, there's some of this.
It'd be cool to have a dialogue at some point. I mean, I know that that's a big dream, but I think the idea of not only transformation being personal,
That's
but
right.
the transformation in the kingdom of God would be a really beautiful thing to see. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm a visual artist. That's what I'm studying in school. That's what I love. And you've mentioned a little bit about like the role that the arts, all of them, have in church, and that like as visual artists, not just as like the slides for the sermon or to promote an event, like not just a skit for kids. Like, do you have thoughts on what that spot is for meaningful visual arts in the church, meaningful like theater and music and dance in the church? What is that, and how do we like, or is there a place for that, and how do we kind of start that conversation within the church? How do you even start to introduce that? I guess is my question.
Do you want to take it or you're made to?
Well, I think most things, you know, for better or worse, I mean, they start with going to the pastor
Yep.
and saying, hey, you know, this is on my heart. I think one of the beauties of, visual art, there's so many ways to think about it. One way is, you know, if we're talking about specifically within the church, is there, well, if you're kind of in my neck of the woods, we have liturgical seasons. If you're in some other neck of the woods, you have often sermon series, right? And so a question might be, hey, and I'm not talking about installing a permanent thing. Is there a way to imagine in a certain season that we're already going to go through as a community together to find ways for certain songs, certain skits of theater, or certain visual art to be in the sanctuary that might give us an imagination? So We're doing a sermon series called Who is My Neighbor? Maybe a photography of actual people in Waco, right outside our door, places that we ignore. So I think those are kind of seasonal. Is often a pastor might go, we'll give it a try once. It's different than saying every Sunday there'll be a dance, and the pastor's like, okay, hold on. Michaela, you had something to add?
Yeah, I just think like when we look at a whole bunch of different traditions in our faith, like a lot of the more liturgical sides of things have this rich history of visual arts being everywhere. And so like I grew up in a Protestant, like Pentecostal side of things really, and our church was pretty bare, and so we didn't have a whole lot of that. But I attend a church here in Waco that has a dance ministry as well, and they kind of combine it with visual arts. And so they're not doing it every Sunday, but we do have like an artist who gets up there and puts an easel on the stage, and is like painting while the worship leaders are singing. And it's just this beautiful kind of combination of like the artist is worshiping, and they're leading us in worship in a different kind of way. So I definitely think that there's room for that across traditions, and across seasons.
And if you're from a tradition that doesn't have that, it may take a little training.
Right.
It may be that you create a painting and there's a short little artist statement or essay beside it, say that this is what this is about. This is what I was going through. These are the symbols. This is what I was reflecting on as I was writing this. And I think that's okay.
Yes.
Because we have to sort of learn. It's amazing to me that people who listen to the parables, chock full of metaphor and symbols, sometimes struggle so much with interpreting art. It's a little wild. But again, it does depend on what tradition you're in, because I grew up in, I won't say what tradition, but I grew up in, because it sounds like I'm slamming it. Beige linoleum and fluorescent lighting. That's about as decorative as it got, and zero art of any kind, because it was considered idolatrous. We had a children's puppet ministry, and my grandfather nearly had a coronary because we were teaching those children how to worship those puppets. Like, what? So again, it just, you have to find a faith community that will, but don't be discouraged. I mean, because also part of what I feel my mission is at Baylor is we have students who are wanting to do theater as their profession. And they're facing, a lot of them, they won't phrase it this way, but they're wondering, where's the line?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the line? That I don't want to cross, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's never that black and white, first of all. But you can be a person of faith. You can be, a person of faith and be in film, be in theater, be in music, be in art, do all of that kind of stuff. And you can handle provocative material from a faith-centered life. That's part of my mission, because the other option is, if they can't find a place in the church, they will leave.
Yes.
They will leave. And the options for us as communities of faith are not to boycott Disney. It's not to boycott whoever the latest person we're mad at, to turn off the TV. No, it's to raise up filmmakers who will go out and make great films that don't have to be expository preaching, that aren't choking on a message at the end, that I know you're a heroin addict, I know you're an alcoholic, I know you're whatever, but if you'll just accept Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, you won't want heroin anymore. That is so dishonest.
Yeah, I think dishonesty is the big. There's a great clip of, I mentioned Eugene Peterson earlier. He had a great conversation with Bono. Do y'all know who Bono is? Okay, great. None of my students
That
do.
short film is on YouTube.
Yeah.
You should find it.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's so great. And he talks about honesty and dishonesty.
Yeah.
And this, the inability to tell the truth. If you tell an artist you got to land, you know, you can go wherever you want, but it's got to end at this station. Like, and then you just, like with the parables, right? I mean, we've talked about, I've alluded to the Good Samaritan, the other most famous one, the prodigal son, ends on an ellipses, right? It's a bad ending, guys. Like, the older brother is hacked off, and he's waiting outside, and the father goes out to him, so it's not the worst ending. And then the father, he speaks, and then the father speaks, and it cuts to black. It's like The Sopranos or No Country for Old Men, all these movies that people like, it's that ending. And the reason it's that ending is because Jesus is literally talking to a crowd of older brothers. And what he's saying is, the story's in your hands now. It continues. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to choose to end the story, Pharisees? And I think that, I don't think anyone who's a Christian artist can ever end a story without hope. But it can be that my only hope is that this causes you to respond. That this goes out and does something in the world. That this is a seed. And I'm throwing it, and I'm hoping it's not landing on the hard soil. I'm hoping it's not landing by the bird. I'm hoping it's not landing by the weeds. Jesus is, if you see his parabolic ministry is literally just like starting with the parable he tells first. Oh, these are the seeds, and I'm just going to keep telling my stories. And I think that story in particular, the hope is that the seed is out there, and it might do the work. But the way that the story actually ends, if I were to, directed by Jesus the Christ, written and directed, I would go, wait, no, like what's going to happen? I don't understand. I want to know what's going to happen to the older brother. And the question I think is, what is going to happen to the older brother and me and in you? And so I think that is such a gift to artists. You don't have to land the plane at a certain place. You may just be asking a question. And that's freedom, and that's release. And again, some other artists are going to go, no, I'm going to have it. I'm going to do Handel's Messiah, man. And like that Hallelujah chorus is going to break out, and like Jesus is going to come back, and everything's going to be, and you're like, I'm like, do it. I remember watching Top Gun Maverick, and I thought that, sorry, spoilers, it's been out. I thought Maverick was going to die because like they kind of set it up like, and I was like, that's a good story. That's kind of sad, but like self-sacrifice. And then he doesn't. And then there's this like, we're going to escape. And I like literally almost was like, do it. Like do the movie thing. Like have the happy ending. Like I want it. I'd settled for, yeah, sometimes we make sacrifices. And then someone was like, no, fullness of the gospel, resurrection, like full reconciliation. And I was like, yes, like I was like, I want it. I want the good news. Yeah.
So it's unrelated to the topic at hand, but I wanted to say that when I tell people that I want to do theater, especially people within my grade or around my age,
Yeah.
their immediate thoughts are, so this kid is weird. I don't think that should be the immediate thing to happen in people's heads. I think that it should be, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, or you could say, in our world that is so broken and distorted, you're like, maybe we need a little weird. Right? Like, I mean, maybe we need the prophets. Maybe they're the ones who are showing us, hey, this thing you've made familiar, I'm going to make it strange that we accept so much of what we accept. And I think that's why people have a natural, like, I've got my faith in this nice little box, and you're going to mess it up, and you're going to make me care about my neighbor, or you're going to make me realize my neighbor's that person. And I hear you, and like, yes, we should work on it, but also maybe you should say, absolutely, I'm weird. Because the gospel, this is what Flannery O'Connor said, you will know the truth. And Jesus says the truth will set you free. She said, you'll know the truth, and the truth will make you strange. Yeah.
Well, they're going to think you're an absolute freak until you're a success, and then they're going to want to be your best friend, right? And then they'll be saying, "Oh, I went to school with so-and-so. But you can't do anything about those stereotypes. You tell them you're gonna be a religion major, oh, you think you're so much better than the rest of us, right? I'm gonna be a music major, he thinks he can sing. People just tend to do that. So you just kind of have to ignore that. And don't play into the stereotype. I do tell, people, because I recruit folks out of high school for our theater program all the time. And if they're wearing black turtlenecks and got the swoopy hair and sit around, I'm like, dude, stop being a weirdo, right? And because I tell them, you need to be as normal as the next guy. Because you know what? We're all weird. We're all weird. You just don't need to play at being that thing. You need to be authentic, because unless you're real, how are you ever going to portray real life?
Which is like we said, the dishonesty and honesty.
Yes.
Yeah.
The thing about that is also, everyone's a little bit weird.
Yes.
It doesn't matter who you are, what you
Yes.
do.
Yeah.
Everyone's a little bit weird to everybody else, no matter what you do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so you sort of celebrate that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are
Yes.
people
Yes.
who just don't care that they're weird,
Yeah.
and instead embrace it as part
Right.
of their
The
personality.
thing is being authentic, being honest,
Right.
and not being performative about it. People sniff that out real quick,
They
that
do.
you're doing that for attention, and instead, no, I am dressed up today. Michaela will tell you, I am the worst dressed, don't tell this to the provost's office, I am the worst dressed professor at Baylor. Why? Because any given day I'm hauling, sets and props and furniture, and I've ruined so many of my clothes that now, please don't tell the provost's office, half the time I'm in shorts and t-shirts. Why? Because I'm rolling around on the ground one minute in this performance class, and we're in there doing, I'm not performing for anybody. I just got to do the thing, right? So just do the thing. Be the artist that you know that you can be, and concentrate on the art and forget about all the other stuff. It'll take care of itself.
It's good.
I have a question. How, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it, how do you navigate multiple gifts or forms of creative expression in various spaces without coming off as, like I have experience in that, and just giving just a suggestion? Just say, for example, I was heavy in theater, let's see, about 15 years ago, but I'm not necessarily in it now, but just certain, I see certain things, and so I can present that, just as a suggestion, not trying to take over, but just as a suggestion. Or I've authored books, different things, I say, well, you can just tweak it this way. Why are you trying to do that? I'm just making a suggestion, but how can you, if you have those various experiences and gifts, how can you navigate that in certain spaces?
I think inviting that for yourself. And no one likes their baby criticized. It's one thing if they come up and go, oh, what a beautiful baby. It's another thing if they come up like Emily Blunt says, say, oh, you had a baby. They really get the difference between that. And so something that you've slaved over, that you've worked over, to have someone come in with the outside and criticize it. I think always, leading with the positive, leading with the positive and everything. And then, you might think about this. I'd be curious as to what that might bring to it. Because you don't know that your idea is going to work anyway, right? And so I'd be curious as to what it would be like if that section was a little more restrained. Because I'd be wondering, what are you thinking? And you don't have to tell me that. So there's a way to sort of make it more of a question, to make it intriguing, to make it feel like an exciting challenge. I deal with this playwriting all the time, because they bring in the plays, and that's my job, is to give them feedback.
Michaela?
Yeah, can I also just kind of speak into that? So, having worked as an assistant director in theater space in a couple of different educational settings now, I have experienced that a lot, where like, I feel like I have great ideas for things, right? But it's not my show, it's not my baby.
Right.
And it's not my group of students, right? Like, I associate with them, but I'm there to ultimately fulfill somebody else's vision, right? And help that come true. And so I think, like, with that, it also, like, when you try the compliment sandwich road, it also depends on your heart that you're coming into it with, of like, because I feel like people can also sniff that out really well, of like, okay, so you were just saying that because you wanted to give me your idea,
Yeah.
versus coming in with an air of humility and saying like, you might hate this idea, but what if we tried this? If we don't even have time to try that, that's okay, I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Right.
Things like that, and of course not trampling your own ideas either, because you have, you know, your own intelligent brain that God gave you, and to bring forth those creative ideas. But yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the heart that we approach those conversations with. Yeah.
I think that's like the actual creative task is to join with. I mean, if you see, you know, and then like the joy is being brought in. My buddy's a screenwriter in LA. We were writing partners for a long time. He called me like a few years ago. I mean, he's not a Christian, he's a Buddhist. He was just like, hey, I figured it out. I figured out how to be successful, how to get all my stuff, like he's like selling stuff left and right. He's like, I just listened to the notes. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, you know, before I'd just be so insecure that I'm like, I wrote this thing. And he's like, now, he's like, I mean, I'm going to discard 90% of them. But, you know, whoever, the writer's assistant in the corner is like, maybe, you know, maybe her mom works for the toy store, you know, and like, he's like, that's an idea. Like, and like before he would have been like, no way she could work for the toy store because, you know, like, and he's like, and so I was like, oh, Phil, you know what you've done is like, you've invited that guy into that work and maybe it's not going to work out. But he went home and he told his wife, and he was like, hey, I had an idea, the writer liked it. And like, he's got good vibes now about your show. And I was like, oh, this is like purely pragmatic that you're inviting people in, but that's actually the source of creative energy. We don't create out of nothing. We're invited into a creative work, and God is a generous partner and says, hey, I got these animals. I didn't pick a name for them yet. I don't think God's playing Guess Who with Adam, where he's like, oh, yeah, wolf, yeah, you got it. Like, I think what he's really genuinely saying is, here's raw materials, let's go. And so what we can't know is two things. We can't know the person who we're coming to and saying, are they really open? Are they really open to me playing around in their, maybe I'm gonna name their animals and they don't want me to. They should, but it's a scary world because they think what I'm gonna do is try to do exactly what Adam and Eve did, right? Try to control the situation instead of being generous. And the other thing we can't know is in ourselves sometimes. What am I wanting to do? Am I wanting to say like, God, this is your big, green, beautiful world, and I'm adding to it? Or am I wanting to go like, I need something? And the only answer is, and what we talked about already, is believing that you are seen, you are beloved. I find the best news I can give to artists half the time is, hey, your life, if you accept Jesus, your life is hidden with Christ and God. You don't have to perform. You don't have to achieve. You don't have to do anything. In fact, if you want to know yourself, you're going to have to talk to Jesus. And I can tell you what he's going to tell you is not, you're doing all right, but you didn't really nail that audition. And I'm really hoping that you can get that story fixed so you can do something good for me and get my gospel message out there. Because I'm really anxious about the fact that it's not getting out there. And I need you to get your stuff together to hit that aria like that. Because these people are going to come to faith. And if you don't do it, it's not going to happen. That's not what Jesus is going to say. He's going to say, you're beloved. You're my artwork. You're my poema. You're my masterpiece. I'm working on you. And as you work on your art, I'm working on you. And I long to work in and through you and with you. And yeah, maybe some amazing stuff's going to happen because of that. But God's not anxious waiting for us to click in. So I just think if we see our work as something people can come into and we can go, yeah, no, that's not it. But first it starts, I think, with a sense of security and safety.
Yeah, and the deepest truths come out of relationship.
Yeah.
The deepest truths between us and God come out of relationship, right? And so fostering that relationship ahead of time before you ever even get to that next work, you know, so that, I mean, I have people, certain people that I can show my stuff to and they can tell me anything. It can be devastating, but I trust them, I believe them, and I will work on it. The other people who come in who it's just about the play, you know. And so investing in the relationship, I think is super important. I have to go. I have to go. I'm so sorry that I have to head out, but this guy's got all the.
Just a few minutes, if there's any last questions.
Thank
Oh,
you
yeah,
so much.
Ask the nature of like ministering to the lost.
Yes.
Are there examples that y'all seen in, or people that have come through Baylor or just in your sphere that have made that connection where, yeah, it's like bridging that gap of like, yes, creating those visual arts and things within the church, but how even connected to missions and the nations, like how is God using that to, yeah, a part of the Great Commission and all those things.
Yeah. I definitely, I mean, I'll say personally, I was talking about, I took chapel into online space during COVID. And we just went through the biblical narrative. I think chapel had kind of just gotten wonky. Traditions, things get wonky over years, right? And so, you know, I was trying to make these really artful pieces that invited people to really meditate on the truth of Scripture. And I don't think there was anybody who said they came to faith, but I had a lot of messages that they would go, you know what, I was writing it off and I was right on the edge. And then this video, this moment where this person said this thing, I thought, I got to stick with this. There's something here. Which was like, to me, in our day and age where we're dealing with so much deconstruction and so much deconversion, I was like, man, that's not nothing. That arts can be the thing, I think, that go, yeah, but I lose this whole beautiful aspect. And I think that's one of the ways. I think in terms of making the leap and making the jump, I think about Paul in Acts 17 all the time, where he is, I mean, few chapters before, it's years before, but still, few chapters before Paul is being like, Christianity is like this much different from Judaism. It's like just a like hair different. And he's like, let's kill all these people. I'll hold your coats, get them. And then a few chapters later, Paul walks into the heart of paganism. I can only imagine that Saul would have been like puking his guts out at all the like gross misunderstanding of who God is. And what does he do? What does he say? He's like, I've been looking at all your art. I've been looking at your statuary, your tombs. I've been looking at all this. I can see that you're very religious. And then he quotes their own poets to them and says, hey, in God we live and we move and we have our being. And hey, this tomb to the unknown God you've got over here, you're close. You're smelling it, right? He begins with commonality. I think Saul would have gone, you are so far from the heart of Yahweh God, who revealed himself on the mountain to Moses in the 10 laws that we have. And you are so far. But he says, man, we share so much in common. And so, I mean, genuinely one of my hearts, like why we go do seminary at the cinema, why I go see movies, is I'm just like, I think you can walk into any film or any piece of art made by anybody and go, I can see you are very religious. You want us to believe that when these two people kiss in the end, that is good news, that they got together. Because you actually want us to believe that like we can work through, you know, the best romantic comedies, they hate each other at some point. They're trying for a gospel that says we can move beyond all our differences and we can become one. And guess what? There's the end of, my favorite end of any story is the end of the Bible. When it says, there comes the New Jerusalem, clothed as a bride, adorned for her husband. So why do the three biggest billion-dollar movies, Avengers Endgame, Titanic, and Spider-Man 3, end with like a man and a woman dancing before they kiss? Why does that happen over and over again? Because I can see by your movies you're very religious. And so I think in terms of like, it's still, there has to be discernment, But in terms of if we want to reach people who are lost, we find the things they're already worshiping. And then if we think about every piece of art we encounter as a worship service, as a liturgical service, then we don't want to be like the missionaries, the colonial missionaries who showed up and said, you're pagans, you're wrong. God revealed himself. Like everything you're doing is terrible. We can go like, it's not the fullness of the truth. But how do we find ways to go, oh, you guys have your young men swim through this river to be initiated into manhood. We believe that going into the water kills the old man and brings the new one to life. How do we look for commonalities? And I think in our current society, you don't have to go to Africa or South America to find worship services that you can go, how does the gospel speak into that? You can encounter and engage with the arts that are being made by people all around and go, oh man, you're right on the money. You're so close. Can I tell you the fullness of God? Because he has revealed himself in history. I mean, this was what ultimately got C.S. Lewis to become a Christian. As Tolkien said, you love the myths. You love these stories. You love it when the God comes back to life. Hey, guess what? In history, it's happened. So to me, that's like the ultimate. I'm not perfect at it, but I think that's the best way to imagine how we reach people who are lost, is we actually imagine they're not totally lost. We imagine they're feeling their way towards the truth, and all they need is a little nudge called, it's Jesus. He's who you want. So.
So good.
I wanted to add really quick.
Yeah.
Conversation that, it happened a few conversations ago, but I'm just now remembering it. Even though the really successful movies have really successful producers, those producers had to throw probably hundreds of drafts, hundreds of different stories. The best singers probably had to throw hundreds of songs at the wall to get something to stick to.
Yeah.
So I draw, I sometimes sing, I sometimes write, I sometimes like make music. I do a lot of creative stuff.
That's awesome.
I just kind of throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks and what I like to do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a lot of work, and I think as we think about missions, it's the same thing. It's just seeds scattered, and sometimes we go. I mean, we need moments, Ebenezer's, where we walk by and be like, "Oh, that tree really grew. It really did take off." But a lot of it's just going, "Okay, God." But God says, Paul's planted, Paul is watered. God gives the growth. So, blessings to y'all.